This week's Strong Talk podcast is brought to you by Renaissance Periodization. Go to renaissanceperiodization.com, which proves that science is stronger. From their popular diet templates to training templates to ebooks, skip all the fad diets, all the misinformation out there. This is the diet I follow myself, Kalle Beck. I have my clients follow this. It just takes all the guesswork, and it's simple, easy to follow way. Go to renaissanceperiodization.com and follow them at RP Strength online. This week's Strong Talk podcast is brought to you by Renaissance Periodization. Go to renaissanceperiodization.com, which proves that science is stronger. From their popular diet templates to training templates to ebooks, skip all the fad diets, all the misinformation out there. This is the diet I follow myself, Kalle Beck. I have my clients follow this. It just takes all the guesswork, and it's simple, easy to follow way. Go to renaissanceperiodization.com and follow them at RP Strength online. We're also brought to you by startingstrongman.com. Go to startingstrongman.com for all the latest news and information on the sport of strongman and for strongman training. Go to store.startingstrongman.com for from training gear, knee sleeves, wraps. We got them from Cerberus, SBD, Spud Inc. We got ebooks like The Cube Method and Built by Mike Westerling. We got everything you need to train for strongman. The truck pull simulator, training templates. Check out our training templates, proven programming for the sport of strongman at just $15 a month. But if you use the code STRONGTALK, it's just $10 a month. Go to store.startingstrongman.com for all of your strongman needs. Go to startingstrongman.com/sponsors to support companies that support strongman and support us and support the Strong Talk podcast, so you get these episodes every week. Like SBD USA, SBDUSA.com, Strength Shop USA for all your strongman equipment needs, KabukiStrength.com for all products like the Duffalo bar, the shoulder rock, and you can use code SS10 to save 10% at KabukiStrength.com. Go to barbellapparel.com for the best fitting jeans for strong people such as yourself, and use code StartingStrongman to save 10%. If you'd like to support Starting Strongman, please go to startingstrongman.com/sponsors. Click at the bottom of the page. You can click the Amazon and Rogue banners before doing your shopping. We get a small percentage of the sale, and it helps keep Starting Strongman and the Strong Talk podcast going. Really appreciate it. Again, go to startingstrongman.com/sponsors for all of the great companies that help make this show possible. I'm here, Kalle Beck from the Strong Talk podcast, talking to Dr. Pat Davidson. We're talking a little bit before. It's been a bit. We competed against each other back when we were both competing and all that, and the 175 division and all that good time. So it was always a pleasure to see you at contests, and we're recording this so everyone else can listen to it. But on a personal note, I'm excited to talk to you and catch up a little bit today.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. And the big contests were always fun because you'd see all the guys from different parts of the country that you never got to see on a regular basis, and you're definitely one of the most recognizable figures, especially in that 175 division. So you always knew it was a big show if you saw Kalle back there.
That's nice of you to say. Recognizable for better or worse, I'd say.
It's all good, man.
It's awesome. But just to give a little bit of background on you, like you're someone who comes up in this podcast a lot. Like there's other guests have referenced it. They're like, in Dr. Pat Davidson. They always do this. You're always getting brought up in conversation about who's been influential to other people we've talked to along the way. And I'm like, yeah, we should talk to Pat. And then it's like a year later, I'm like finally talking to you. So how did it go about where you got introduced? You started getting into strongman. Obviously, you have like a long fitness and sport career, pretty much your whole life. But like when did you find that where it clicked over to actually finding out about strongman training?
Well, it was so random, to tell you the truth. Like it's just kind of crazy. And like I look back and I'm like, how the hell did I ever like compete in strongman? Like how did my life unfold into that chapter? Like it's, I remember as a kid like seeing World's Strongest Man and like all the old school guys like Jeff Capes, and like it just sort of like it's so foreign and outside of any of the sporting stuff that I grew up with. I grew up with traditional sports of like baseball, football, basketball, stuff like that. So I mean, I never expected to get into strongman. I wasn't looking for it for sure. I graduated from Springfield College in 2009 with my PhD, and my goal was to be a professor and really try to work in the strength and conditioning field and develop young strength and conditioning coaches. And I went to Brooklyn College and was there for a couple of years, and then I got rehired at Springfield College to go back to my alma mater. And Springfield College is sort of referred to as the cradle of coaches. And there's some wild stats about like strength coaches coming out of Springfield College. Like somewhere like 70+% of teams that have won a Super Bowl have had a strength coach from Springfield College running that part of their operation. So that was my goal. Like I wanted to revolutionize the future of strength and conditioning and do it at the place that is the cradle of coaches. So I get there in my first year, and like a bunch of the students that I had in undergrad classes were competing in strongman stuff. Like Rob Kearney, Matt LaCroix, Zach Hadge, being the three biggest of them. And they saw like I'd be in the gym, like just training really hard out in the football field, running sprints and 300-yard shuttles like by myself. And they were like, they were sitting in the class, and they were like, man, your information is great. You like to train. Like, you want to come to this place, Lightning Fitness, and give strongman a shot. And, I honestly, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think I want to get sucked into that wormhole, because I know myself, and I'll probably be pretty good at it. I'll probably get addicted to being good at something, and then it will take over my life. And, they just kind of kept pestering me, and they got me to go in one day. And, that's exactly what happened. It just like, I remember the first day I was there, I saw like a sign-up sheet for like a contest that was, I went in there in like a late September or something like that. There was a sign-up sheet for a contest in December. I was looking at the weights that were listed for 175-pound competitors, and I was like, I can do that. That doesn't even look that hard. And then I was like, I'm going to have to diet and actually do this for real. And as soon as I started training for something, as soon as I did that first competition, it was like I was just completely sucked into that world.
So that's interesting. It was the student's approach to the teacher. I don't think I got that from interviewing Kearney and Hadge and everyone along, and not just talking to them personally a lot. That's pretty interesting there. They sucked you into it, and you're right. I know. I was reading. You have your new book coming out, and I was reading the whole Mass. When's the release date for that?
It's already been released.
Oh,
it's been out for maybe like a month now.
Okay,
something like that. Yeah.
You sent it to me a little bit pre-release, so you can go and pick it up right now. But I was reading that, and you were discussing having like that obsessive kind of personality in mind, and it's very it's easy for that. You have to really channel where that goes, so it goes towards something positive, or even what's positive. It might even just be something you enjoy, like strongman training, but that might not be positive to like your whole overall goal of your life. And if that makes sense, and I really do relate with that, because I'm similar. I get crazy, about one thing, then I sit there and try to learn every little thing I can about it.
It's like that's just how I operate. Like I'm such an all or none person. It's ridiculous. So I'm very, very careful, and I've gotten more so about picking and choosing where I direct my attention, because whatever I direct myself at, I get completely absorbed into, and like I lose touch with so many other parts of life. It's just how I've just learned who I am as a person, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like some people are like that, some people aren't.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it at all. It just is who you are, and you got to direct it one way or the other. But so you get sucked into that that rabbit hole of coaching and competing. I mean, not sorry, into competing in strongman. So it was fun, I'm sure. Once you go down one of those paths and you find a new thing that you didn't even really know was an option, that's always fun.
I love subcultures and countercultures and stuff like that. And I competed in mixed martial arts for a while, and that's an interesting group of individuals to get involved with. It's like, and strongman, I feel like I met people that I could relate to even more. It's just like a bunch of like depraved lunatics for the most part. And like those are the people I want to spend time around, like people with like really crazy senses of humor. Like there's no topics that you can't discuss. You can be completely offensive, and it's all good. So I definitely enjoyed getting to know the people in that sport. We had such a great time. Like Saturdays when we would go over to Matt Mills's place, Lightning Fitness in Connecticut, like there'd be just like, it would look like dinosaurs roaming around in that place. There were like some legit big, strong dudes. Like I remember always feeling like the smallest, weakest guy in the room. But it'd just be like some serious training sessions, and then we'd all go out and eat. Like we'd like roll like 14 deep into like a sushi place, and like they would just look at like who was coming in and be like, oh God, this is terrible. So it was it was like a really good family, like the guys from Springfield. Like I just like I think about it, and like I felt like I was like the conductor of the crazy train, like. And I wanted it to be that way. It was pretty clear, like if you're going to be good at this sport, like you're going to have to figure out a way to make it fun, because there's very little that's actually fun about it. Like you're lifting crazy heavy stuff, like the equipment, like it just hurts. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing fun about picking up a Husafell stone and carrying it as far as you can. It like tears your skin apart. Like stones are ripping your chest apart the whole time. But like if we can create this alter ego sort of like demented mindset and just be lunatics together, like on this like really just like crazy rocket ship adventure to someplace that is mysterious and wild, then the guys are going to buy in. It's going to create the best team culture possible. It seems to fit in with the personality types of the people that are doing it. I'm having fun. Everybody's having fun. And it's going to get people to stick with it and support each other. And I think that's what the primary glue was that held it together, oddly enough.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely more fun with a group. And I really relate when you say, like, you, like, when you're competing in this, you, like, switch on like you're a whole different person. Because that's always, I always felt like I was how I was placing, I always felt like I was a performer. Mm-hmm. Whether anyone came or wanted to come to the show at all, right? Like, I wasn't like, oh, everyone came here to see me, but I felt like I was putting on some sort of performance in every lift I did, in a competition, even in training, which could be a detriment sometimes because you don't realize, like, hey, maybe the actual show's in 6 weeks, but, that's a whole other topic. But it's just, you feel that switch where you're like, okay, I'm someone else, and that's why I feel a lot of people are drawn to it, because you're almost letting, it's such a like a raw emotional release of, instead of like this, you're supposed to act like this in society, oh, hey, how are you doing? Oh, how have you been? Like, it's just this, like, that's like who you are, like at a primal level, you're able to, because you pretty much have to doing these events.
You really do. I love that, what you're talking about being a performer. Like, I remember that the Hadge brothers, like, they have their own language. Like,
yeah.
You spend enough time around those guys, and you're like, they can speak to each other with like phrases that like make no sense, but they know exactly what they're saying. And then if you get sucked into their world, you start to be able to speak a little bit of their language. And they were just like the master of nicknames. And they gave me the nickname Daddy Bones, or it was that or Coachy Bones sometimes. And like I still have no idea what that means. But I remember I would just switch into that character to be able to do the competition stuff. Like, I wasn't Pat Davidson anymore. I was some other individual. And as soon as I started doing that, and it really didn't happen until like my last year competing, man, my competition performance just went someplace else. Sure. It really just got so much better. And it's funny. It's almost like that fake it till you make it kind of deal. You pretend that you're somebody else, And before you know it, you can do things that you couldn't normally do. And then all of a sudden, that's just like standard. That's what you can do on your own. But like those guys, like they created such a great atmosphere. Like it was just like I was saying, like nicknames were a thing. We like dressed up like idiots sometimes for like mock competitions, and just like it was like a clown car. But that I'm telling you, I really think that like because everybody's going to get obsessed about programming and technique and all those sorts of things. And I never thought that was the biggest variable that was driving the success of that unit coming out of Springfield. I really thought it was the fact that we were able to make things fun and stay loose and just train consistently. And I think that the only way you can train consistently in a miserable sport is to somehow turn that misery into something fun and like escape it through whatever means you possibly can.
Yeah, that was one of the first things you said in your book when I was reading it. Over the week was you're like, I can tell you all these things about training. We can go over all these different, how to periodize whatever you did. But the number one thing is just being consistent. And to be consistent, you have to figure out a way to. Usually, you're going to want to show up to do things that you enjoy, or that add something else to your life. Like it's hard to be consistent just out of pure necessity, when it's not really a necessity. Like going and competing and showing up to Strongman Saturdays, that doesn't help make sure that your lights stay on in your apartment or your house or whatever. It doesn't. Probably the opposite. Like if anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Consistency is number one, and at some point it should be fun. And like you see the success the Hatch brothers have had, and they keep going on and doing all these contests, but you can tell that they're still. What's great about that is that they're still having fun. At least that's how the perception I get from it is. Like it's just the ride's just gotten to the platform's higher, the stage is bigger, but it's the same thing as like when I first saw them when they were like 19, 20 years old at a nationals. It's just they have a bigger stage to do it on, but it has to stay fun. As far as going back to like how your strength and conditioning background and everything, what did you learn? Like how did you apply what you already knew to strongman training and programming, competing, and
Right.
what we'll start with that, and then also how did what you learned from strongman you take back for your strength and conditioning, and now you're applying to your clients and books and programs now.
I think that's a great question. I think that's where it all kind of comes back to, I think, in terms of what's important. So I think that I came into coaching guys that wanted to be elite strongman competitors, and I tried to bring the concepts of modern strength and conditioning for team sports athletes to the world of strongman. I just kind of took a look at a lot of strongman competitors, and I just said to myself, these guys are not athletic enough. They're not focusing on certain variables like energy system development, speed and agility, and developing like movement patterns in all three planes. Like they're getting hurt, they're tearing biceps, they fatigue, and ultimately like their performance is lost as the contest goes along, and they're just not, just plain and simple, like they just don't look athletic while they're doing these events. And to me, like you look at developing athletes for any sport, and you always start from like this general or variable realm. If I've got a young kid that I'm working with, I want them to play as many sports as they possibly can, so they develop as many motor programs as they can. I was seeing in front of me a lot of kids, like when I say that, like I think like Kearney, LaCroix, Hadges, Triana as like kind of the big rocks that really did some serious damage in the sport and still are. And the Hadge brothers had played football. Kearney had a background with with lifting and also cheer, and LaCroix had some other stuff, but like they didn't have a huge portfolio of sports under their belt. And I could see that these guys wanted to specialize very quickly in strongman and just be lifters. And I was just thinking to myself, they're too young. It's a bad idea. They're going to set themselves up for failure. I need to coach these guys as if they were track and field athletes. So I did a ton of, like, basically it was very similar to like a Charlie Francis model for developing sprinters, as well as kind of a Mike Boyle model of like all around strength and conditioning. So we did a lot of stuff that would like revolve around movement quality, like getting these guys to learn how to move their body weight, how to control their pelvis and thorax while they're moving their arms and legs. I got these guys doing a lot of like just manual techniques on each other to learn how to like mobilize rib cages, mobilize pelvis, be able to twist their pelvis in one direction as their rib cage turns in the other direction. We did a lot of stuff like multi-directional speed and agility, short sprints, shuttle runs, side shuffling, back pedaling. I did a lot of like acceleration drills, 10-yard sprints, 15-yard sprints, 20-yard sprints. We did special endurance runs, 200 yards, 400 yards, 300-yard shuttle types of things. And then we lifted, you know what I mean? And the lifting was fairly simple. I created like block programming. There would be like volume acquisition blocks, accentuation blocks in terms of like, peaking either power or strength. And then we did like unilateral blocks so that these guys would have some semblance of balance and not become overly dominant on one side of their body versus the other. And I think that worked really well during year one. You know, I sort of was trying to put together like a 4-year developmental system for them so that by the end of their senior year, they would be able to like specialize to the highest possible degree, leave the college and be able to just continue on in the sport as specialists. Now, I only got really 2 years there because I was just a fuck up and like, I couldn't keep my head on straight in terms of I just didn't know how to not piss off the other faculty members and the department chair and stuff like that. So I got the boot early from that school before I really got to like see the full plan unfold. But
Sure.
it was going to move from general to specific, well-rounded athleticism, merging ultimately into pure specificity. My primary philosophy is that specificity is always the thing that's going to make you elite. It's just that the pathway to getting to complete specificity is not linear. Like, you need to have supporting physiological building blocks to be able to get you to the place where you can handle the greatest amount of specific volume possible as an athlete in the given sport.
Yeah, you need to have that base to be able to then go whichever direction you want, basically.
Yeah, and that base is built around, in my mind, movement, like biomechanical competencies.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have sensory motor control over your body? Like, do you know where your feet are in space? Do you know where your spine is in space? Do you know where your head is in space? Can you regulate those things as you're doing your movements? And then energy system balance. Like, I think that a lot of guys neglect developing an aerobic system early on. And if you don't have an aerobic system, you can't recover particularly well, either between sets of exercise or between training sessions. You know, you have to be able to shift over into a parasympathetic state to be able to actually grow and have adaptations take place in the body. And the easiest way to get that is to just be aerobically fit. So I wanted to have those things in place. Can the guys move and can the guys recover? And it takes time. Like, you can't just rush that process. And if they can move and they can recover, now we can really just attack the movements. And I was getting more and more towards that with those guys by like year 3. And by that point, it's like I didn't want to spend too much time doing too many barbell lifts with them, or I didn't want to squat them. We didn't squat at all because there's no squatting until you get to World's Strongest Man.
Sure.
So it was just like let's try to train the events for the contest that you're going to do as many times as possible before you do that contest, and let's not do anything that would sabotage our ability to recover from doing those contest moves. Like I really think that if I had guys by year 5 and 6 that I'm training, we aren't doing anything except for the contest movements that you're going to do in the next contest that's lined up for you. And I'm going to make you compete so many times a year, it's going to make you sick. But, that's what I would do with a football player. That's what I would do with a baseball player. You're only going to get better at your sport by doing your sport. And if I've set up all of those underlying prerequisites, there's no need to go back and continue to develop those prerequisites above and beyond whatever baseline level is necessary to be able to support the acquisition of more and more specific volume.
Yeah, so how I'm taking it is, I think some people will miss the point there where you're not telling, it's not like those athletes, you got them and they never squatted, they never did barbell lifts. They've already built up enough strength that they can apply it to do the event training.
Correct, yeah.
To do it, yeah. I want to make sure no one misses that point. Like, to get stronger, you shouldn't do a back squat. No, that's not what we said. I don't think that's what you said.
Right. No, it's definitely not. It's a prerequisite. Mm-hmm. Like you have to be strong enough to do strongman. Mm-hmm. But then getting stronger at movements that aren't in strongman is probably not going to transfer over to improved strongman. Like, if I'm training a shot putter needs to have prerequisite back squat strength, power clean strength, overhead strength. But once they hit those numbers, if I make them stronger in those movements, it's not going to improve their ability to shot put. It might actually make their ability to shot put worse.
Sure.
And it's like if you're already really strong, squatting more is a huge stimulus and stress, and you're going to have to recover from that. And the energy it takes to recover from squatting could potentially sabotage the energy it would take to recover from stone training or farmer's carries or whatever other event you're actually going to have to compete in. So it's like everything's got a cost, and once you are at prerequisite levels, I don't want to drain your bank account on things that aren't going to transfer directly to what you have to compete in.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing you say, like when you're trying to develop someone as an athlete in the first place, I see people come into the sport. I interview, hundreds of people at this point on how they got into the sport, and you're like, oh, how'd this person go pro within a year? It's like, oh, I played Division I football. I was on this practice team. Then boom, they just started off with such a higher, they already built those prerequisites so high already. It's a lot harder to develop athleticism than strength, I've found.
For sure.
Especially, I think most people. I think you go do a bunch of squats, you do some presses and stuff. You can get strong, but like getting someone to learn how to move their feet correctly, to do that yoke walk that's going to be 2 seconds faster than someone else. Despite if that other person is stronger. Like that's knowing how to move your feet and keep your hips in line, all this stuff. Like that takes a long time, and it's not very measurable to most people. Like I'm sure you can test. You know how to like look at it and measure it, but just like your average person going in the gym, it's harder to measure how you're making progress on just are you more athletic or not versus I got a little stronger.
I just think like. There's so many things. Like if someone, like I remember Wesley Ipock, the first year I went to nationals, he came out of the blue and just smashed everybody.
Everyone.
And
he wasn't stronger than like you or I. Like.
No, he definitely. You know what I mean? Like, but he won all of the carry events, mm-hmm. and he had that soccer background, and I don't think you can, like the way that you practice for soccer with a lot of like quick feet drills, like dribbling a soccer ball, learning how to be fast without taking big steps is what you have to do if you're dribbling a soccer ball or dealing with those types of situations. So those motor programs are already in place. Or guys that play football doing a lot of like those ladder drills and rope drills and like cuts and things like that. Like you learn those things. And you know, we do know from exercise science and like human development, there's critical periods where you can develop certain things. And those neurological elements of speed and power are developed during like early adolescent and adolescent years. So it's almost like if you get somebody, and you know, like if you do personal training or you coach older people that have athletic pursuits, if they didn't do speed and power sports as a kid, they can get strong, but they almost can't ever jump or move fast. They have no pop to them,
right?
Because they miss those critical periods.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was getting at, and just noticed, you know, anecdotally, just working with people and seeing people is like, you can get someone a little stronger, but getting them more athletic, like you have to go back and like, what sports did you play like as a kid? And sometimes I'll dig, like I'll get a client inquiry and I'm like, wow, you move really well, and like they don't have like any weight training. They're like, yeah, I've been, you know, lifting weights for like a year, but they get strong really quick, and then they just come up, they're like, oh, I did high level gymnastics until I was 12. It's like, okay, yeah, all right, I get it now.
Right.
Like they're like, no, I didn't really play any sports, because they're thinking like football, whatever, but you know, they sat there and tumbled and, you know, learned, you know, body control and everything at a very young age.
For sure. And you know, it was kind of like I had some guys on that team that clearly came in with like very little athletic background, you know, but they were kids that wanted to lift weights and get strong. And it's like, oh shit, like you're not fast. Like you clearly weren't one of the faster kids in your high school. You can't jump. Shit, like I don't know what I can really do with you necessarily. But what I did was everything was competitive, you know. So if we're doing speed and agility stuff, it's not like you're doing it on like you're out in front of everybody. You're going like head to head with some other people that are about your ability level, and everything's a race. Everything's a contest. And you put the pressure on people like that, and you'll force them to step up to that level. And, you know, it was kind of like, it's real interesting because the original question here was like, what did I apply to strongman from strength and conditioning, and what have I applied to strength and conditioning from strongman? And I'll tell you, like, the degree to which competition brings out a different animal is something that I brought to strength and conditioning from strongman. Because man, you just switch over, like, when things matter to people, they're going to improve their performance so much more as compared to like, it doesn't really, who cares? Like, who gives a shit? Like, and I learned that like when you have very confined rules and like the specifications of what's asked for you are very clearly defined, and there's an element of competition to it, the performances skyrocket. And you know, when you're dealing with most athletes in the weight room, they don't get motivated by like just lifting weights. You know, it doesn't do it for them. Or Gen Pop personal training people, it also doesn't motivate them as much. But if I create these, like, if I can create a program or a workout that actually seems to matter to people, that has an element of competition to it, it completely changes the degree to which people put effort into their training. And the moment you change that effort level, the results that come back are different than any other results I've seen. And you know, that kind of, like, in terms of the books that I've put together, Mass and Mass 2, like, there's an element of that in just about every training session. Like, the rules are very clearly defined. It's like a game. It really, like, a training session is more like playing a game than it is like, oh, you're just going to do your, you know, 3 sets of 10, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's I learned that the game matters in strongman, and that you have to bring the game to the training room so that it connects with competitors. And I'll tell you, like, that, like, a lot of strength coaches do not get that. They try to be so safe and perfect and everything else, and then they just totally miss what I think is the most important variable of bringing out the competitor in the athlete. And boy, did Strongman teach me that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I noticed that reading through your books is it really plays like and you know the cultural references you have are similar to the kind of stuff I had growing up, and it seems like you're like it kind of reads like a video game in a way. Like if I was to
Mm-hmm.
read a video game, like I'm going through this level, then we're going to that, and like I know how much time I'd waste as a kid just playing a video game where you're getting all you're like, oh well, I could be this like if I get this, then you get that, then you get and you're like you're bettering yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
through strength and conditioning work, you do that, but if it's not quantified, you might not see it. So yeah,
Yep.
you're playing that game, and that's without getting off on a tangent for everything else. That is something that CrossFit definitely succeeded with doing. Is
100%.
they whatever however they got to it, they put a board up there, they timed it, they scored it. The board, you could see what the 6 a.m. class did, and then everyone would look, and people push harder because they know like, oh, usually I work out with this guy, but he worked out a little earlier. I got to make sure I beat him, and there's downsides to that as well, but there's a lot of upsides for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're gonna push harder.
Yeah. And like, yeah, it's there's so many variables that exist in training, and trying to figure out which ones matter more than others, I think is the most important thing that you have to do as a coach. Because you can get like completely bogged down in minutia, and you start picking the pepper out of the fly shit or vice versa, and you get nothing done. But you spent so much time worrying about these tiny things and blah blah blah, and it's like you missed the whole boat. Like the Titanic just went by while you were fucking around with the dinghy on the side. And it's like it takes time and honesty and reflection to actually be able to like discover what matters more than other things and to create like a priority list.
Yeah,
At,
it's going to be pretty individual too. What matters to you might be different than what matters to me.
totally.
From a motivation standpoint.
Yeah. And, just to try to finish talking about like the merger of exercise science and strongman, or the other way around, that bidirectional arrow, I think that, when I try to create a program, I go through like a very systematic approach. I sort of examine the demands of the sport, and I create kind of like I just sort of break it down like a taxonomy. A taxonomy is where you figure out every kind of animal and you give it a name. A taxonomy of strongman, I just looked at all the events and I tried to categorize them. It's like you have overhead events, you've got deadlifting events, you've got carry events, you've got loading events, and you have like mixed bag kinds of events. And every now and then you get like a weird grip event or something like that. But the big boys are the overheads, the carries, the medleys, the deadlifts, and the loading.
Mm-hmm.
And I just designed the program design around making sure that during a weekly basis, during a monthly basis, during an annual basis, I was accounting for all of those particular things all the time. Like there's never a point in training where you can't be emphasizing all of those things. It just will be to, varying levels. And again, like thinking back to like my Charlie Francis type intervals of vertical integration, like all of the variables have to be trained all the time. It's just the sliding emphasis of how much you're training one at any particular time is going to be different. But, it's kind of like, I don't know how many people have like a sort of like a thought process like that in terms of designing things, like, or at least like an analysis, like what are the components that exist throughout this sport. And you have to do that first. And then you have to try to figure out how much volume you can get away with going in each different direction. And I think you have to physically experience the sport to do it. And, some of the takeaways I got was as soon as you do yoke in training, you can't do anything after yoke. Like yoke just ruins you. It's the heaviest event, and it has to be last in the training session because no good will come from doing anything after yoke in training.
Interesting.
Yeah,
for me, I felt the same with stones. Like after I do stones, I'm done. Like it wrecked me.
totally. So it's just kind of like, can you organize a training session where you're actually able to build and get the lifts to go in the right direction from the sequencing and ordering of the way that you're doing those events during the training session, during the week, during the month. And, that's a whole other thing. But are you just like, when I think of science, I think of like being objective, measuring things, trying new things, seeing if it works, not involving your emotions in the process, and just having an open mind. But also that science and progress are completely tied together. They go hand in hand. They're completely attached at the hip. So everything always has to be progress driven, and especially in the sport of strongman, because the weights that you used in last year's nationals are not going to be the weights in next year's nationals. It's always going to be heavier. It's always going to be more. You always have to go in one direction. So are we making progress, or are we staying the same? Because if you're staying the same, you're actually getting worse in the sport. Like if you're not making progress, you have to completely throw out everything that you're doing because it's not working. So I think that like that's what I took from a scientific mindset in terms of applying it to strongman. Like willingness to admit that everything that I'm doing is wrong, having absolutely zero emotional attachment to my system, completely being unafraid to throw it all out and just do something completely different as long as the needle is moving in the right direction for the things that matter. Because I just see so many people that are emotionally attached to exercises like the squat, and it's like, dude, does that thing matter at all? Because I'm a skeptic. I don't think that thing matters one bit. And I have zero problem with throwing out a squat if I don't think it matters. And let's just see how your competition results are going. So I think that was the last thing I really wanted to touch on with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it is interesting. Like you see so many people just worrying about the minutia and not thinking about how it applies to what the specific tasks that you're actually going to compete in are. And like everything that's came down from the majority of people just have applied. We do powerlifting plus events for strongman, and that's a very flawed approach. Like it works to some extent. You're going to get stronger and everything, but at some point, like we've talked about, once you've built up the strength, how do you then, when there's 50 other strong guys that you have to compete with, what separates you? It's probably being better at the actual tasks. It's past the point of just a couple strong guys show up and they don't know what the tasks are, so you have to be prepared. That's not how the sport's played at this point. What separates you? Probably being better at those actual things.
Yeah, and like I can remember going to a couple events. Like first time going to nationals, I had never done a car deadlift before, and I zeroed that event. And I was doing really well going in. That was the first event on day 2, and I think you pulled it for like 36 reps or something silly.
2012, I think.
It's somewhere. It's hard to even remember.
I got like 28 credited.
Yeah, you were just bouncing that thing around like it was a toy, and I thought it was going to break my spine, and I just had no idea how to car deadlift. And I remember actually talking to you after, and you were like, well, the thing you have to know about the car deadlift is it's not a deadlift.
Yeah, I've said that a bunch of times since, too.
And I just remember thinking, like, man, I was in 4th place going into that event, and there was only one more event after that, which was the suicide medley. And I was, like, eyeballing this thing, and I was like, I got a chance to maybe win this whole thing. And I went from fourth place to 16th place in one event, and then it was like I'm completely screwed here. And it was literally because I had never touched that event. And I think I probably could have deadlifted with just about everybody there, but it wasn't a deadlift, and I had no idea. And you make those. If I always felt like if I went to a contest and I had never touched that piece of equipment, I was trying to figure it out during the contest. And if I had been able to rehearse that piece of equipment and I knew it like the back of my hand, it went really, really well. And every time I went to a contest, and it was whatever piece of equipment I had never worked with was the place where I fell in the rankings. And every piece of equipment I knew what to do with, I rose in the rankings. And it seemed to be that simple to me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you had a good athletic base and, and good strength, good conditioning, and you understand how to train and everything. So then knowing how to apply it is the only real thing, missing thing. If you don't know the actual leverages of the event. And I think it was that same contest. You said you were always struggling with the circus dumbbell, and like I sat there and I talked to you about it for like a while, and then I bombed the damn thing. I got like 1 rep because it was different than my circus dumbbell. But I didn't know your background at that point. I just like, oh, this guy's fun to talk to. I didn't know anything about you, and like, so we're just chatting. You kind of gravitate towards some person or another in between, and then that downtime between the 30 seconds of actually doing something without, throughout a weekend. Right. So you're chatting, and you're like, I just have a problem. I'm like, you just got to think like this, and of course, whatever I did tell you, I don't remember, but you must have picked it up right away because then you beat me in the event, which I was very confident in. You're like, I got 3, and I was like, crap, I got 1. I got like 2. I was like, how the fuck this happened? But
yeah, I had never been able to hit that weight for any reps, and then okay, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like something clicked. But yeah, I think that was a good example of it too. Where you have a good enough understanding of something that you were able to apply it very quickly.
Yeah, if you're clueless about something, you're in big, big trouble. I remember doing an event. I had never done anything with kegs really, and then there was like this keg over bar event, and like I just couldn't even grab the keg right. I got 0 reps on any of them, and I was just getting like crushed by dudes that I should have been like smoking in that event. Mm-hmm. And it's just like demoralizing. It's hard to get your head back in the game after something like that. Like, I don't know. It's like if I had a test on algebra, I wouldn't be reading like English lit the night before. Sure. I would be focusing on the thing I need to take care of.
Yeah, you gotta be strong enough to do it, but then you gotta someone could be that difference in that 10%. You're gonna surpass them a lot quicker by actually knowing how to do the event. Even if you're 10%, like if you're 90% as less strong than they are, like if they're a little stronger than you, but you're more technical in the event, you're gonna be better off. Probably. Mm-hmm. When you talk about earlier, you talked about just having that conditioning base to be able to, mass volume and recover in between events at a contest. In between that, that's something I've really, in my own coaching and training, found out the importance of, in the past couple of years, and applied. And I try to tell more people, like. I was just talking to someone, like, I get asked all these random questions in the minutia, and I'm like looking at these people, and you can tell they're just not in shape, right? Mm-hmm. Like their heart's in the right place, they want to get strong, but then there's this thing of like they get fed this thing of everyone's on this 20,000 calorie diet, and they're just sitting around eating, and then they go do a couple sets of 5, then they go home, then they eat a cheesecake, and we all know that's not really the truth of how like the pros, but like that's an attractive truth to a lot of people, so then they kind of apply it and bastardize it, and they're just not in shape. So I tell people, like, if I was to tell someone, like, everyone's already doing their lifts, they're already trying to get strong, I say, like, I'd tell people just go for a walk every day would be one of my main things, because they're just not in shape enough to recover.
Yep.
So, how, like, just you take someone who's pretty sedentary, what's your advice on just getting them in shape enough to get strong?
So it's kind of like there's some accepted sequences of developing fitness. And most of these are coming from people that have their background will come from kind of like, again, like Charlie Francis. Charlie Francis is like the godfather of what I consider to be most modern, smart strength and conditioning, at least in the U.S. Like, so he had his high-low model, and it's like the high training is going to be like very high central nervous system demand, and it's going to be fairly. It's for sprinters, it's going to be sprinting and crushing weights, and those are the high components, like to a certain degree plyos and jumping and med ball work and things like that fit in it. So you're going to do that for your high stuff, and when you do that, you go ham, like you just crush it. And when you do your low work, you make it low. Like you don't try to do anything that is going to be in the middle. Like so examples, like I think going for a walk like is a perfect thing for most people. Like get your heart rate somewhere between like 120 and probably 160 at the very highest. Like, yeah. But I think the sweet spot for most strength people is going to be right around like 130, 135. And can you keep that thing in that zone for a pretty extended period of time? Like I would say the real caveat here is don't have to recover from your recovery work.
Sure.
Your recovery work is designed to make you better at recovering from real training. But you can't do your real training if you're trying to recover from your recovery work. So it's like this fine balance of that. Like, when I think of recovery work, I think of things that are shifting you more towards health. And to me, health is aerobic fitness and movement variability. Like, do your joints move in all the possible directions that they could move in? And in many ways, health and elite performance in strength and power sports are complete opposites from each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, if your training has been so performance oriented, sometimes it can diminish health. And when health drops off below a point that's too great, now all of a sudden you're not healthy enough to be able to perform. All right. But if you push too much towards health, you probably don't have enough of that performance element to be able to reach elite states. So it's always kind of like, what does this person need? And like, you have to be healthy enough to get yourself into a place where you have the capacity to train with enough specificity to actually do some damage. So it's like step one for me would be, I need to develop your aerobic capacity. And when I think of aerobic capacity, I'm literally just thinking making your heart bigger. So that's where I'm thinking like around that 130 beats per minute zone is kind of the sweet spot. And like, you might have to be there for longer than you want. Like you might have to be there for an hour and a half, something like that. But if I can just get people to go outdoors and go for a hike, that usually is the best possible case. Like sunlight, and vitamin D, and a whole bunch of other elements to that are critical factors. And again, like I like hiking and uphill based activities. Like get on a mountain, because every step is going to be a new step. It's going to make your ankle move in a different way. It's going to make your femur move in a different way. You're going to have to rotate your thorax. It will develop pushing ability through each leg. And it's also going to keep your heart rate in that about 135 to maybe 150 zone. Now, every time, like if the heart rate gets too high, the heart is beating too fast. It doesn't have enough time to fill maximally with blood before it beats.
Okay.
Like, if I'm exercising around 130, it's at it's slow enough so that the heart can fill maximally with blood for every beat. And when it fills maximally with blood, it's actually stretching the heart out like a water balloon. And if I do that for a long enough time, it will change the actual size and volume of the heart. And if I can make your heart bigger, then your resting heart rate becomes slower. And if your resting heart rate is lower, then it actually is shifting you autonomically over to being more parasympathetic. If you like, there's only two states of existence with autonomics: sympathetic, fight or flight; parasympathetic, rest and digest. If you are parasympathetic at rest, you're triggering all of the chemical processes associated with muscular adaptations, growth, hypertrophy, cellular adaptations. It's recovery oriented. If you're always sympathetic, you can't recover, you can't adapt, you can't make progress. So it's like you need to have the underlying prerequisite: can you recover from exercise? If you can't recover from exercise, you cannot handle training volume. You will get hurt. You will not go anywhere. You haven't earned the right yet to really like train specifically and really maximize that element.
Yeah,
like
you don't get to do the fun stuff.
Yeah, like it's like you gotta kind of just do really lame stuff in the beginning. Like, and it's not that lame. It's like it's just you like I said, you haven't earned the right to really like drop the hammer yet. You try to do that, and you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to be stuck in a cycle.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because I get a lot of people that come to me with advice, and I'm like, all right, we're doing unilateral work, and we're walking, and we're doing like I'm not getting you to touch an atlas. This is bad. I'm just going to get you hurt, and they're probably not going to want to follow that, but some do, and that's when it's really exciting. Like when you actually, when I've gotten to some people that like. They actually, you can tell that their movement's right. Like they don't look like their body's just like going in 3 different places when they go down to do a front squat anymore. Like everything looks like it's supposed to, and you're like, wow. Then they actually get to go compete and stuff, and that's what you have to do at some point. And I know, like we were talking about health and performance, and you can go way too performance, and your health suffers. That was me before my last Arnold, and you looked at me. I was a mess. I was a complete wreck. So you learn it the hard way sometimes, and you came over and helped me with some stuff, and I'm always grateful for that. Just that's how great the community is. Like you need to come out of your way to like try to fix my body just because I'm in pain and I'm a wreck, but I always appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I feel like if you've been there and done that, and you've had some help, and you see what it can do, it's like being able to do that for somebody else is what it's all about.
Yeah.
I look at things in contrasts. It's like, what's the most important thing? Probably the thing that you're not doing. And and it's like in an individual sport, probably the most important thing is to have a team. And when you're so concerned with your own self-actualization and personal growth, probably the best thing you can do is to get out of yourself and try to do something nice for another person. And like when you are reaching the peak of your specific development, you probably have to go back towards the health side of things. When you've gotten too far towards the health side of things, you probably need to like drop the hammer on specificity. Like the world and the universe is a funky place, man. And like the more people think they have it figured out, the more hopelessly lost they actually are. Because the only way you know what's good is to really know what's bad. And vice versa. And it's like, if you're just consistently kind of going in the right direction, whatever you're doing is working, and I'm not going to judge it. Like, it's just that if you think that's the only way, you're in big trouble.
Absolutely. Just to go into it. So, Mass 1 and 2, they're great books. They're fun reads. Like I said, it reads like a video game, and you really delve into each stage of the program and each day and what the point is, which I think is very helpful for people following a program. And it's a lot of what you talked about. Like you're doing one day to set you up for the other days, which then recover for the day. So like, how did it come about where you wanted to write the first book, and then of course the second?
I would say, like, I'm a very transparent person. Like I don't like to try to just say something to sell something to people or whatever,
Sure.
And I would say, like, most of the people that are going to listen to this are strongman competitors, and I would say that Mass 2 is the book that they should go for.
Yeah.
Like that's the real deal training to me, and like I really think Mass 2 is probably one of the best training programs that's ever been written. And that might sound arrogant or cocky, but I think that's factual. It might be the best training program that's ever been put on digital paper. And I really think that if guys actually run that program, they'll probably destroy everyone that they're going to compete against. And I look at it like I kind of want the Hadges and I want Kearney to run that program, because I really think I think it's better than anything I ever wrote while I was actually coaching those guys. And I think that they know me enough. They've got enough buy-in and personal experience to know that I wouldn't bullshit them on something like that. But I think if other guys want to try it, I just don't think they're going to be let down by this thing. I think they're going to PR in pretty much everything to a level that they wouldn't expect. And I don't see that same thing happening by strongman competitors running Mass 1. And the reason for that is, like, Mass 1 was, like, when I got let go at Springfield College, I got another job opportunity in New York City to work for a gym that was supposed to be like a elite training center. And it was interesting. Like, they do a lot of work with Men's Health. So Men's Health contacted me and they were like, listen, we got this new intern, and this kid's a college cross-country runner who just finished his senior year. He's too skinny to work at Men's Health. We need to put as much mass on him as we possibly can during his internship, which is going to be 16 weeks. Can you write a program for him to follow? So I wrote the program for him, and the program is literally Mass 1. And I wrote it as an individual program for a kid that had never lifted weights before in his entire life. And that kid he was like 5'9", 128 pounds or something like that when he started it, and he gained like 24 pounds on that program in 16 weeks, which is just kind of silly, especially when you think about the percent change in body weight.
Yeah, it's huge.
But it's kind of like, and there are some guys that are lifters that have run Mass 1 and like hit some ridiculous PRs, which sort of blows my mind because I didn't write it for those guys. I really didn't. But I learned a lot through actually writing that program for that kid and doing the program with him. Because it's mostly just GPP. It really is. Like, it's just, it's like fitness and like a well-rounded sort of thing. Mass 2 is just a completely different animal. Like, Mass 2 is everything that I know about good training for advanced individuals. There's elements of Mass 1 in it because, like I was kind of saying, like, fitness to me is very important for most people. Do you have the ability to recover from the big bang stuff? So that needs to always be in a program. But it's to me, Mass 2 is the right blend of strength, power, hypertrophy, leading ultimately to a peaking phase, which was the peaking phase that we used at Springfield before big competitions. It's exactly the same peaking phase that we used. And that peaking phase, I can remember, like, Dustin Slocum was one of our guys that, I don't know if he's still competing. I think he might have. Yeah, he might have even won like the 220-pound U.S. Nationals a couple years ago or something. He put 120 pounds on his deadlift in 4 weeks with that peaking phase.
Wow.
A lot of guys just their numbers just went berserko in that peaking phase. But if you try to do that peaking phase when you're not ready for it, it'll break you in half. Like, it'll shatter you. So everything in that program is based on being able to get to that peaking phase, being able to handle the volume and intensity in that phase. And if you can get through that peaking phase, like, it's lights out. Like, it'll change numbers. Historically, I've seen those numbers change ridiculously with that phase, and it's like there's so many individualized programs that people write for people and they coach them in. Mm-hmm. I would put this as a general program up against any individual program out there that you'd probably spend a hell of a lot more money for.
Sure. Yeah. No, it looks awesome. I was looking through. I'm like, this ain't easy, by any means. Yeah,
Oh, no.
any phase along it, every step of the way, like you got to work there's not really a space in there to like kind of like half-ass it either. Like there's some programs you can kind of get through and you can do more here than kind of throttle down there. Like it's very specific how you're going through and how to approach each phase that you're working the whole way through. Like
Oh yeah,
yeah,
man.
you're not going to be able to hide from it.
Now, right from day one, you're gonna get punched in the face with brass knuckles. Like it's like I think I've learned a lot in strength and conditioning. Like there's the biomechanics and like PT oriented guys in strength and conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that world. Like I'm very well versed in mechanics and breathing and getting people to move better and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like most people that are in that realm are afraid of like dropping the stress bomb on people. And I've never been afraid of that. Like I'm always going to try to train you as hard as I possibly can. All the other pieces are there so that you can train as hard as possible and not die. And like I'll never stray from that. Like it's always going to be about how hard can you train, because that's the only thing that's ever going to make you better.
Sure.
It's just sometimes you can just break yourself to pieces, and I don't think you'll do that on this program. I think it's that razor's edge between killing yourself and basically taking yourself to places you didn't think were possible.
Yeah, well, there's the different days are set up where it's you're really busting it, then it's kind of almost you're going back to more of a recovery. Do you want to just lay out just kind of how the days are set up, just without saying the 100+ pages that are in the book, but
Oh yeah. Like I said, transparency. I'm never really afraid of that. Like, so the first 3 phases are like there's 4 training days per week, and each training day is slightly different. So day 1 is called a developmental day. And this is coming from the language used by a lot of like the Russian coaches. Like I got that term from Val Nasedkin, who was a Soviet decathlete and one of the Olympic level coaches for track and field Soviet and Russian athletes after that. And he's also been one of the primary people involved with the Omega Wave, which is a device you use to track the nervous system's readiness and heart rate variability and just tell you where you're at on a big picture basis from your ability to recover from exercise. Mm-hmm. So the developmental day is, in some ways, it's a steroid shot. It's like you're doing almost bodybuilder-oriented kinds of exercise, stuff that's going to make you super acidic, super hot. It's going to cause metabolic distress. It's still heavy. There's going to be hypoxia of the tissues that are working. So you get a huge hormonal response from that kind of exercise. And the Val Nasedkin sort of concept is that you will have an elevated hormone response for about 72 hours post-developmental day. And those hormones being present in the system, what hormones do is they accelerate the rate of cellular adaptations to stimuli. So if I do strength and power training within that 72-hour window of the developmental day, I will get greater rate of change in strength and power because of the hormonal influence. If I do, like whatever you do in that 72-hour window is elevated because of the hormones being present. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever taken steroids, you know how powerful hormones are on that front. Like, the rate that you can change in strength while you're on a cycle is silly. So if you can't be on a cycle or whatever, the developmental day is the steroid shot at the beginning of the week. The second training day is called an alactic aerobic day. So when you're working, you're working in an alactic way, which is the phosphagen system. You're not going to be really tapping into the glycolytic system. It's the high-end, pure strength and power stuff. So that's where you're going to be doing like your very heavy lifting and your plyometric activity and explosive type training. And you'll be recovering enough. During the recovery period, you're existing in an aerobic state. So you're either in the 93 grade gasoline or the 87 grade gasoline. You're never playing in the 89. The third training day of the week is, to me, like it's different pathways. Like day one is a hormonal stress metabolic pathway. Day two is a pure high-end fast twitch fiber pathway. Day three, I'm going to train the other fibers. I'm going to train the moderate and slightly slow twitch fibers. We're going to do higher numbers of reps in the sets. It's, like 3 sets of 10 would be an example of what you would do with your big lifts. You only get adaptations in the fibers that are working and that get fatigued during exercise. Mm-hmm. So day two, I worked and fatigued the fast twitch fibers. Day three, I'm going to work and fatigue the moderate and slow twitch fibers. And then day four is basically like your second steroid shot. I call it the Cajun because it's like a quick burner. It's not as high volume as the developmental day. It's about 50% of the volume of the developmental day with slightly higher intensity. But it should propagate and continue on the hormonal response so that you get back around again to the developmental day to start the whole process over again. So that's the first 3 phases. And then the fourth phase, like I said, is a peaking phase. It's exactly what we used at Springfield. And it's like, I think that when people first look at the numbers, it's like, well, this is crazy. Like, this is crazier than like a Shako or a Smoloff kind of cycle. But I've never seen anybody really get jacked up by it when their fitness levels are high enough for it.
As long as they did the previous 3 phases, right?
Yeah, just don't skip on it. Don't try to do phase 4 on day 1. You'll get broken in half.
Yeah. If you have, nationals is coming up. I think we're, a couple weeks out by the time this airs. Don't just jump into that thinking you're gonna do it if you haven't done the base yet.
Yeah, it'll go tragically wrong for you.
So it's set up so you list like exercises that you'd pick for the certain areas in there. Mm-hmm. And if you were then to apply like the same program to Strongman, would you just still pick like a general strength or you think you could throw some Strongman movements in there?
For sure.
Because that's going to be the question people ask that are listening to this.
I never organized the training in this way at Springfield, but elements of everything that's in this program are things that we did at Springfield, and it's pretty simple swaps to me. Like the developmental days, for the most part, are going to be big exercises put into a circuit format. It's going to be miserable. Like I can tell you, I ran like a challenge to promote this book, and it was the phase 2 challenge, the 2040, which is 5 exercises in a circuit. You have 20 seconds of work to get 10 reps. You got 40 seconds rest to get to the next station, and you get a 3-minute break between the rounds. And it's like, what's the highest amount of volume you can move in the combination of those 5 exercises done 6 times?
Brutal.
And the guy that won, it is crazy. Like, the guy that won was Steve Tripp, who's an absolute monster. He moved like 80,000 pounds of total work in that protocol. And but I can just tell you, the exercises that I go with for most people are going to be a trap bar deadlift, a bench press, a Pendlay row, a squat, and an incline press. So if I'm thinking about Strongman, I'm going to take, I'm going to use whatever kind of deadlift implement I need to get better at for that event. For the press, there's 2 presses in there. I'm probably not going to go with a flat bench. I'm probably going to have overhead-based presses in that. It's what do you need to get better at? Is there a log in the show that you're going to be doing? Is there an axle? go with one of those.
Sure.
You know, I've definitely, I think some implements don't lend themselves well for that kind of stuff. Like a stone is tough. Because just from a timing element, like getting 10 reps of like stone to shoulder would be.
Yeah, it's longer to complete a rep.
Yeah, you just have to be like kind of creative. But like, I wouldn't maybe not squat. I mean, you could probably go with that on developmental day because again, the hormone response is what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But try to mix in more strongman movements into that. And then day 2, which I kind of borrow from Kalle Dietz's triphasic training. So if people are familiar with that, they would understand that concept. We use triphasic training with strongman implements at Springfield. Like phase 1 of that is a 6-second eccentric. You're doing 2 reps. You're trying to be in like 80 to 88% of your 1 rep max. We did like eccentric stone lowering and then pop the stone up on the box.
Yeah.
When you take that stone off the box and like develop the eccentric strength of lowering it,
yeah, you get strong.
You get really strong.
Mm-hmm.
We did eccentric car deadlifts at a certain point. Like the phase 2 of that is isometrics, like hold the implement at the sticking point. With most overhead stuff, it's like right at the level of the hairline.
Mm-hmm.
So like hold the overhead at that point and then press from there. We held stones at kind of the sticking point for most people, which is like not on the lap, not at full extension, like halfway in between there.
Yeah, right before you're trying to get the hips underneath you pretty much, right?
Yep, exactly. So we did most of these things with that. We would pair isometric stone loading with plyometric activity right after it. And the book explains why you would do that with post-activation potentiation. But I think it's applying exercise science and physiology to strongman development, and really it's just a matter of like swapping in strongman movements in the place of like what I listed out as barbell movements in here.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's an awesome read whether you actually even end up following the program or not. Like I learned a lot reading through it. I'm going to give it a even deeper read again this week, just because you should always be learning, whether you're just trying to get stronger, you're trying to coach people. That's something that I get the privilege of being able to interview people like yourself, because I get to just ask you the questions. Like, not everyone, it's a little harder to do, but you learning stuff every week. I'm learning stuff just being able to conduct the interview, even with new people, like people that don't have like a coaching background or exercise science. I'm always learning something just doing these shows.
And I think you want to learn from people and listen to people that are coming from different areas too.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm going to be coming from a completely different angle than probably what most people are going to be hearing on typical episodes of this. Or like I'm a wild card in some ways. Like, I'm not even in the sport anymore. I have no idea what's going on. I don't even know what the guys' names are that are doing stuff now. So like it's like I've always thought, like, why would you do the same stuff everybody else is doing? Because if you do exactly the same stuff everybody else is doing, you're going to end up just like them. I don't want to be just like anybody else. I want to dominate and blow everybody else away. So I need to do very different things from what everybody else is doing. Otherwise, like, I'm just going to be right in the middle.
Yeah, that's awesome, and you can definitely get in a rap. You just all your look, like, you get so, like you're saying, you love a subculture, but then all if you do is listen to that subculture, you don't realize that other things are going on around it. And how did these things get into the subculture in the first place? Is they were from other things. And that's kind of what's crazy is that's kind of what strongman is. It's like we took this test of strength from here, we took this from here, we kind of adapted it for this, as a sport, but then all of a sudden people go, well, that's not strongman or whatever, and it's like, well, it's a bastard child of like strength and conditioning, like and everything. So if you just stay too much in the subculture, I think it's bad for the sport and it's bad for people in it, just from a continuing their strength and their educational process. But I think it's bad for the sport too, because everything ends up looking too much. It ends up being too standard, when it's not supposed to.
And like Dick Fosbury, the guy that created the Fosbury flop for the high jump, like that revolutionized the whole sport. You don't know where the next revolutionary thing is going to come from, but I can guarantee it's not going to be the same standard thing that everybody else is doing.
Sure.
You gotta look on the outskirts of town to find the next big thing. And if you can be the guy that figures that out, like he won the gold medal, and he was not a great high jumper. Just figured out something that nobody else was doing.
Yeah,
that's always been my angle.
Well, that's always my favorite moment watching the sport is when people go, "Is there a rule for that?" And you go, "Shit, well now there is." Like that's my favorite thing. Like when Kaz loaded the stones from the heaviest to the lightest, that everyone else was doing, and he won, and they're like, "Well, you're not supposed to do it that way." He's like, "You didn't say you can't," and then there's a rule. Or like when Stumpy Reigns in Africa, had the Africa stone, and he put the little tape together so he could clench his hand, he could connect his hands. Like,
yeah,
I love when people say like you could call stuff like that cheating, but that's my favorite stuff in sports is like when you get away with is essentially cheating. It's just you were smart enough to be ahead of the rules makers.
I'm 100% with you, man. I've never been a big rule follower.
Yeah,
and I get more enjoyment out of seeing somebody figure out how to beat a system.
Yeah, how to game
than
it.
anything else. Yeah, like that's what it's all about to me. Like I don't want to play on the same level as everybody else. Like I am totally cool with like the whole like bank robbery heist mechanism.
Sure.
Like I'm coming at you this way. You thought I was bringing the fastball. Here comes the curveball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think I had I was watching Icarus with my wife. I don't know if you've seen it, but I'm sure
I haven't.
I think you'd really enjoy it. But they're talking about how they game the whole doping system and like the levels they went. And I watch it in a different way. Like I look at it and I go, wow, like I can't believe they pulled it off. Like pulled that off. Like and they're like, oh, that's moral, that's wrong. That's probably true to some extent, and corruption and all that, but. Like just the way the what humans are willing to go to just get this little advantage and make it seem like everything's one way, and deceive to accomplish a goal. It's interesting. I'm not saying I agree with it or not to that extent, but I find it fascinating.
I think it's evolution, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I feel like.
Like evolution knows no morals. It's a tinkerer, and sometimes it tinkers and it finds something right, and then it completely makes other species go extinct, and then the world keeps going on.
Sure.
And it's like we just happen to have all these kind of crazy, probably socially driven ideas of what's right and what's wrong, and that is not necessarily in line with the greater reality of the actual mechanisms of how life works. And, like your feelings don't matter that much in regards to the way things actually just unveil and emerge as time goes on.
Yeah. Right when we're probably going to start going good, I think this is a good time to wrap up, though. But it's been almost an hour and a half. Appreciate you coming on. If there's anything else that you want to add, we can talk for hours about all these type of things. But for another time, another day.
No, man, I'm good. I mean, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I figured as much. It's like you get a couple of meatheads going on things that they're talking about, and it just never stops.
Yeah. But of course, everyone should, you should check out Mass 2, especially, you recommend that more for this audience. Yep. And we get that. What's the website to get that at?
It's at Rebel Performance. And like what I would say on that front, like, because is there one other thing to mention? And yes, I think it actually the Mass 2 as a program comes with what I consider to be the best nutritional product available on the market.
Okay.
Because that book was co-authored by myself and Dr. Ben House. And I think Ben is a madman, and if people don't know who he is, they have to follow him. You got to follow Ben House. The dude has a PhD in nutrition from the University of Texas. He has moved himself down to the jungle in Costa Rica and lives on a mountain jungle with his wife and their 4 dogs. He built a weight room that's on the side of this mountain, and he's going to be doing strength and conditioning retreats down there going forward.
That's awesome.
You go down there for 10 days and you train like a savage, and he feeds you the most perfect meal that you could possibly have on a daily basis. He's a scientist. He sticks you with a continuous glucose monitor. He looks at your blood glucose throughout all 24 hours, and he will design your nutrition program around your blood glucose responses. But he put together tracking sheets for volume for the program. He put together a macro tracking sheet. He put together a micronutrient tracking sheet. It's all his individually designed tracking sheets, which are a million times better than any other tracking sheets that exist out there. I honestly think his contribution to the book might be more valuable than mine for a lot of people, because it's unlike anything else that exists from a nutritional standpoint. And the guy is, I think, the smartest person in the world right now when it comes to performance-oriented nutrition and lifestyle factors. So yeah, and just to kind of share the link that that you can get Mass 2 at, it is rebel-performance.com/product/mass-TWO/.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and I'll put that in the show notes. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or whatever, just hit show full description. You'll be able to just click right through it and all that. Make it easy for you. Make it easy for everyone listening. And he sounds like he's the smartest person. And you're saying he's the smartest person as far as nutritional tracking and everything. But I'm he just managed to build a gym and live in a mountain in Costa Rica with his 4 dogs and his wife. That makes him the smartest person probably in the world right there. You get life,
yeah. He is a very unique individual, and I think if you just add him to your Facebook friend list, you will learn more through his Facebook posts about nutrition than you will learn through any textbook or any other source out there. And he'll write it in a way that makes sense to regular people. So couldn't recommend him or his stuff, what he's doing, and his contributions to the book more.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you definitely also I recommend adding Pat Davidson as a friend. You're always putting great posts out, and you got a good sense of humor and everything, and you're training like a beast to get. It seems like all the strengths came back, which I'm sure that's awesome to see. Everything.
Yeah. Healthy, feeling good, and I'm practicing what I preach. I'm on the program, and I'm hitting lifetime PRs.
Yeah, at how old now?
37.
Yeah.
So
a life of strength and conditioning and training and hitting lifetime PRs. So
yeah,
it's working, and it was awesome having you on. Appreciate everyone listening to the Strong Talk podcast. I'm Kalle Beck. Pat Davidson. Go pick up Mass 2. rebel-performance.com, and great talking to you again, Pat. We'll have to keep in touch and talk again soon.
Thank you very much.